The sound of the assembly line used to be my heartbeat. The rhythmic hum of the conveyors, the hiss of the welders, the clang of metal, it all meant progress, survival, purpose. For 12 years, I'd walked through those factory doors before sunrise. Same steel boots. Same thermos of black coffee. And every day, I told myself, if I work hard enough, they'll notice. They never did. Until the day they called me into the conference room, the one with the frosted glass walls that always made bad news sound polite. "Mr. Lawson," said Margaret Cole, the operations director. Her voice was sharp, precise, and cold as the floor we stood on. "We've decided to move forward with our automation phase. Your position will be replaced by the A9 assembly unit." I stared at her, not understanding. Replaced. She smiled like she was reading off a script. "It's not personal, it's progress." Behind her, a shiny silver robot arm stood still on display, the same one I'd helped calibrate just weeks earlier. "That thing," I said, pointing at it. "It doesn't think. It doesn't care. It doesn't fix mistakes at 3 a.m. when the system crashes." She folded her hands. "It doesn't need sleep either." I felt my chest tighten. "After 12 years, you'll get a severance," she said quickly. "And a reference. You've been dependable. Dependable. Like a screwdriver. Like a battery. Something useful until it wasn't." As I walked out, the other workers avoided my eyes. Even Eli, my closest friend on the line, just nodded weakly. "Sorry, Dan," he whispered. "You know how it is." I didn't. Not yet. When the doors shut behind me, I felt the hum of the machines through the glass. A sound I'd once found comforting now felt like mockery. Outside, the sky was gray. Rain tapped against the metal roof, slow and steady, like the heartbeat I'd just lost. At home, the silence hit harder. My boots sat by the door, covered in oil stains and memory. The severance check lay on the table, an insult dressed as gratitude. That night, I drove back to the factory, parked across the street under the yellow streetlight. Through the windows, I saw the robots working, perfectly synchronized. No breaks. No sweat. No lives. They didn't laugh. They didn't think. They just replaced. And as I sat there in the dark, soaked in rain and humiliation, a thought began to burn slow and steady in my chest. If they thought I was obsolete, if they thought I'd disappear quietly, they didn't know me at all. I started the engine. The factory lights glowed in the distance like a dare. "They built machines to replace me," I whispered. "Fine. I'll build something to replace them." And that's when it started. The plan. The fire. The comeback. Because one day soon, I wouldn't just walk back through those gates. I'd own them. For weeks after they fired me, my life was nothing but silence and static. No morning rush. No steel-toed boots. No reason to wake up. Just the sound of my own heartbeat and the echo of that sentence. "It's not personal. It's progress." Progress. That word haunted me more than any insult could. I spent my days scrolling through job listings that looked identical. Automation experience required. The same technology that stole my job now demanded I understand it just to get a new one. It would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. But anger can do something strange when it doesn't fade, it starts to focus. One night, at 2 a.m., while I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bills and cold coffee, I found an ad that would change everything. Free online course, Introduction to Industrial Robotics, learn to program the machines that power the future. I clicked enroll before I could second guess it. That's how it started. At first, it was just confusion and frustration. Flowcharts. Logic gates. Sensor arrays. I barely understood half of it. But I kept going. Night after night. Lesson after lesson. Failure after failure. Until one evening, I realized I was no longer reading out of desperation. I was reading out of obsession. I began to see how the robots thought, how they processed commands, adapted, repeated. And somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, I whispered to myself, They didn't replace me with intelligence. They replaced me with obedience. That thought lit a fuse in me. I started collecting old components from scrapyards and auction sites, servo motors, PLCs, control boards. I spent what little savings I had on tools and wires. My apartment became a mess of cables and mechanical limbs. Sometimes, sparks flew. Sometimes, smoke. But every failure taught me something. I wasn't just learning how robots worked. I was learning how to outthink them. Months passed. My hands were calloused again, but this time from creation, not repetition. I built a prototype. Then another. Then a small automated arm that could sense pressure and self-correct without a central system. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Still, I needed proof my designs worked outside my cluttered apartment. That's when I saw a post in an online business forum. Local factory seeks affordable automation consultant. Must deliver results on a tight budget. The owner was a man named Mr. Barrett, a small-time manufacturer struggling to survive the same wave of automation that had drowned me. When I showed up at his plant, he looked skeptical. "You don't look like an engineer," he said. I smiled. "I'm not. I'm a man who knows what happens when machines replace people. And I can make them work for you, not instead of you." He gave me 1 week. I rebuilt his entire workflow using repurposed robotics and custom code, machines that cooperated instead of competed. When his production tripled and costs fell in half, he shook my hand with tears in his eyes. "Son, you just saved my business." That single handshake did what a dozen job interviews never could. Word spread. Soon, other small factories called. And I built solutions for all of them, machines that were smarter because they had humans guiding them. Within a year, I founded my own company, Iron Mind Systems. We didn't build robots to replace people. We built balance. But beneath all the success, there was something else burning quietly, a goal I hadn't told anyone. Because one day, while going through a trade magazine, I saw a headline that froze me in place. Gibson Manufacturing faces financial strain after costly automation errors. The same factory that fired me. The same one that replaced me with their shiny A9 units. Now bleeding money. Losing contracts. I couldn't help but smile. That's when the idea turned into a plan. Cold, calculated, and beautiful. I contacted one of my new investors, a quiet man named Clark Hensley, who had deep pockets and an interest in undervalued assets. "Clark," I said, "I found a company worth saving, and humiliating." He laughed. "How poetic." 2 months later, the paperwork was done. The deal went through. And just like that, Iron Mind Systems became the majority shareholder of Gibson Manufacturing. The factory that once replaced me now belonged to me. As I signed the final document, I whispered to myself, "You called it progress. I call it payback." Year after being replaced, I stood outside the same factory that had thrown me out. Same rusted gate. Same oil-stained pavement. Only this time, I wasn't here to punch in. I was here to take over. The Gibson Manufacturing sign still hung crooked above the main building, proud but tired, like the company itself. The once bustling lot was now half empty. The hum of machines that used to drown conversation was barely a whisper. I parked my car beside the director's reserved space. No more sneaking through the employee entrance. As I walked up the steps, workers paused mid-task, eyes widening. Some recognized me immediately. Others whispered, "Is that him?" The same security guard who escorted me out a year ago stood by the front desk. He blinked at me. "You're not supposed to be." I smiled, sliding a new ID card across the counter. Gold trimmed. The kind reserved for executives. "Actually, I am," I said. "Starting today, Iron Mind Systems is the majority shareholder. And I'm your new owner." He froze, mouth slightly open. Behind him, someone dropped a clipboard. "Mr. Lawson?" The voice came from the stairwell. "Eli." He looked older somehow, worn down by stress and 12 months of corporate chaos. "Dan, it's really you?" I nodded. Looks like the obsolete man wasn't so obsolete after all. He shook his head slowly, smiling in disbelief. I can't believe it. Believe it, I said, patting his shoulder. Now show me what I paid for. The factory floor was a graveyard of half-functional machines. The shiny A9 automation units, the future of efficiency, stood in uneven lines, some frozen mid-motion, others flashing red aerolights. A few workers huddled nearby, manually fixing what the robots had broken. I turned to Eli. What happened to all the progress they bragged about? He sighed. It started great. Then the maintenance costs skyrocketed. Every small software update broke something new. Half the workforce was laid off, and morale tanked. Now, even the robots don't trust each other. I laughed under my breath. Machines don't break from exhaustion, they break from arrogance. That's when I heard it. A voice I hadn't forgotten. Smooth, cold, and laced with the same false kindness as always. Mr. Lawson. I turned. Margaret Cole, the operations director, the woman who replaced me, stood at the top of the steel staircase, clipboard in hand, power suit perfectly pressed. Her expression faltered for just a moment before snapping back into its corporate mask. Well, she said, descending the stairs. I'll admit, I didn't expect this. Neither did your investors, I replied. Turns out, they didn't like losing millions to machines that can't think outside a manual. Her smile tightened. You've made quite a comeback. I'll give you that. I didn't come back, I said. I bought back. For a moment, the air between us was electric. Workers had stopped pretending to work. All eyes were on us. The woman who'd fired me and the man she deemed replaceable. She crossed her arms. So, what's your plan, Mr. Lawson? Fire the robots? Bring back the good old days? Because I can tell you right now, nostalgia isn't a business strategy. I stepped closer, close enough for her perfume to mix with the scent of oil and metal. My plan, I said quietly, is to build something smarter. Not colder. You built a factory that worked without people. I'll build one that works because of them. Her eyes narrowed. That's not efficiency. It's sustainability, I said. You see the difference now, or do I need to draw you a graph? A few workers tried to hide their smiles. Margaret's face hardened. You're making a mistake, Lawson. I nodded. That's what you said the first time. And look where we are. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I cut her off. I'll need your resignation on my desk by the end of the day, I said calmly. You've run this place into the ground long enough. The new Gibson begins tomorrow, under Iron Mind's name. Her jaw clenched. You can't. I just did. She stared at me for a long moment, fury flashing behind her eyes. Then she turned sharply and stormed out, heels echoing against the floor like the last ticks of a dying clock. When she was gone, the entire factory seemed to exhale. The workers looked at me, waiting, uncertain. I climbed the metal staircase she just descended and turned to face them. Starting today, I said, voice steady, no one here is replaceable. The machines will work for you, not instead of you. You've been treated like parts, it's time you were treated like people again. For a second, silence. Then, applause. Hesitant at first. Then growing. A sound the factory hadn't heard in years. Eli smiled. Welcome back, boss. I looked around the floor, the same walls that once witnessed my humiliation now holding my redemption. Not boss, I said quietly. Builder. The next morning, I arrived before sunrise, the sky still gray, the air heavy with the hum of silence. The same factory that once threw me away now belonged to me. Every step through those halls felt like walking through an old wound that had finally healed. My reflection flickered in the steel doors as I passed them. The man who used to take orders was now here to give them. But revenge wasn't enough anymore. I didn't want to destroy the place that broke me. I wanted to rebuild it, smarter, fairer, stronger. By noon, every remaining employee gathered in the break room. The same people who had watched me walk out a year ago were now watching me take the floor again. Their faces were cautious, skeptical. Hope wasn't something they'd been allowed to have here for a long time. I'm not here to fire anyone, I began. My voice echoed through the silence. I'm here to fix what was broken, not the machines, but the trust. Murmurs rippled through the room. You've been told that machines are better than you. Faster. Cheaper. Smarter, I continued. But tell me, when the power went out last month, did the robots fix themselves? When shipments failed, did the A9 units stay overtime to clean up the mess? No. You did. Eyes began to lift. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to build a factory where humans lead technology, not the other way around. Starting today, every worker here matters again. Silence. Then, slowly, the first round of applause. It spread, hesitant at first, then real. For the first time in years, the room didn't feel like a cage. It felt alive. Eli, standing at the back, smiled. Guess we've got ourselves a real boss again. I smiled back. Not a boss, I said. A builder. For the next several weeks, we tore apart the old automation network and rebuilt it from the inside out. The machines that once replaced people were reprogrammed to assist them instead. Every robotic arm, every conveyor system, every line of code was rewritten with one goal: cooperation. Each worker was paired with a machine, learning how to guide it, improve it, even override it when needed. We called it coactive automation, a system where human instinct met robotic precision. And the results? Immediate. Productivity doubled in the first month. Downtime dropped by 60%. Defects nearly disappeared. The same factory that once relied on cold efficiency now thrived on living synergy. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead, convincing the board. 3 weeks later, I sat across from the same board members who had approved my termination. They hadn't aged well. The stress of declining profits had carved deep lines across their faces. The chairman leaned forward. Mr. Lawson, your changes are unconventional. You're telling us to trust people again? That's not how modern manufacturing works. I slid a report across the table. Numbers, charts, proof. Then maybe modern manufacturing has been getting it wrong. The CFO smirked. You've had a good month, Lawson. But this isn't sustainable. You're blending emotions with engineering. I smiled faintly. Funny, that's exactly what makes it work. The machines don't think ahead. People do. And I'm betting on them. The room went quiet. I opened another folder and placed it on the table. Here's the deal. Iron Mine Systems is ready to acquire the remaining Gibson shares. You can take my buyout offer now, or hold on until the market leaves you behind. Either way, this factory belongs to the future. And the future has my name on it. They exchanged nervous glances. Within a week, every signature was inked. And just like that, Gibson Manufacturing officially became Iron Mine Industries. The grand reopening was electric. The floor gleamed. The hum of synchronized machines filled the air like music. The workers, my workers, moved with confidence. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, drones hovered above capturing every moment. Above the factory entrance hung a new banner in bold silver letters. Progress with purpose. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a declaration. As I stepped up to the podium, I saw familiar faces. Eli, the staff who had once doubted, and even some of the old executives who had come out of curiosity. But one face stood out. Margaret Cole. The same woman who had fired me now stood at the back of the crowd, her arms crossed, hiding behind a polite smile that couldn't disguise defeat. I took a breath and began. A year ago, this factory fired me to make room for robots. They said I was too slow, too human, too replaceable. The crowd was silent. But look around you now. The same people they cast aside are the ones who rebuilt this place, stronger, smarter, unstoppable. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. I caught Margaret's gaze. For a moment, she looked like she might speak, but she didn't. Because deep down, she already knew. The man they replaced with a machine now owned the machines. And they worked for him. Eli leaned close and whispered, "Feels good, doesn't it?" I nodded, smiling at the sight of the people who once feared for their jobs now laughing, proud, alive again. It's not revenge, I said softly. It's balance. The months that followed the grand reopening changed everything. Iron Mind Industries wasn't just a company anymore, it was a statement. New contracts poured in. Media outlets called it the comeback story of the decade. Investors who once laughed at the idea of human-centered automation now begged for meetings. But for me, it wasn't about headlines. It was about standing inside the same factory that once kicked me out, and hearing laughter that wasn't cruel anymore. It was pride. It was life. One evening, I walked through the floor after hours. The machines hummed quietly, the lights glowed warm, and the air smelled like oil and victory. Eli was doing a final inspection when he spotted me. "You ever get tired of walking through here at night?" he asked. "Never," I said, running my hand over one of the assembly lines. "Every hum, every spark, it's proof we got it right." He smiled. "You turned a machine's graveyard into something human again." But not everyone had forgotten the past. A week later, I got a message. Margaret Cole wanted a meeting. She walked into my office like she still owned the place. Tailored suit, perfect posture, but there was something missing. The certainty. The control. "Congratulations, Daniel," she said, forcing a smile. "You really made something out of this experiment." I leaned back. "It's not an experiment anymore. It's the future." She scoffed lightly. "You really think this human-first nonsense will last? Technology doesn't stop evolving. Sooner or later, people become the bottleneck again." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the glowing factory floor below. "You're right," I said. "Technology doesn't stop. But neither do people, when someone believes in them." She paused, caught off guard. "Margaret," I continued, turning to face her, "you taught me something important, that machines can be replaced. But people? People can rebuild. That's what you never understood." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Maybe I underestimated you." "No," I said. "You underestimated everyone." That night, I stayed late. Through the glass walls, I could see the workers heading home. Smiling, talking, waving goodnight to the robots that now worked with them instead of against them. I opened my laptop and looked at the company dashboard. Coactive automation. Operational. Iron Mind Industries. Profitable. Human employment growth. 47%. The numbers didn't just show success. They showed proof that progress didn't have to erase people to move forward. The factory lights dimmed as the night shift took over. I walked to the balcony overlooking the entire floor. Below me, machines and humans moved in perfect rhythm. Metal and muscle, mind and motion, precision and heart. It was harmony, the kind no algorithm could ever simulate. Eli appeared beside me, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You know," he said, "I still remember the day they fired you. You didn't even look back." I smiled. "I didn't need to. I knew I'd come back one day." He chuckled. "Yeah, but I bet you didn't think it'd be like this." I sipped the coffee, eyes still on the glowing Iron Mind logo across the floor. "No," I said. "This is better." Weeks later, we hosted an innovation summit. Executives, engineers, and journalists from across the country came to see the model we'd built. During my keynote, I stood beneath the same banner that hung from the rafters since day one. Progress with purpose. "This factory once replaced people with machines," I began. "They thought efficiency was everything. But we learned something the world forgot. Machines make products, people make progress. And when you give people trust, they give you greatness." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. At the back of the room, I caught sight of Margaret again, this time clapping slowly, respectfully. It wasn't sarcasm. It was surrender. When the event ended, a young reporter approached me. "Mr. Lawson," she said, "if you could tell the world one lesson from your story, what would it be?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "They replaced me with a robot," I said. "So I built a future where that could never happen again." That night, Long after the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, I stood alone in the quiet factory. I placed my hand on one of the machines, the same model that once took my job, and whispered, "Looks like we finally figured out how to work together." The robotic arm whirred softly, almost like a nod. And as the hum of progress filled the air, I realized something deeper. Revenge hadn't built this. Purpose had. Because when you stop fighting machines and start teaching them humanity, you don't just win back your job. You redefine what it means to be irreplaceable.